All right, let's take a look at practice 20.1. We have 6 sentences here, and we have 3 different kinds of conditionals. So let's categorize the sentences according to the kind of conditionals they are, just so we know that before we even start translating. So we have 3 categories. We have basic conditionals. We have indefinite. And I know that Duff uses the word conditions. I like conditionals better. They mean the same thing. Indefinite conditionals. And then we have unfulfilled conditionals. This is marked by A plus any. So any mood, any tense, and then any mood, any tense. This is marked by ayan. The accent goes here. When the accent goes on the first, I don't know that I mentioned this, but when the accent goes on the first of 2 vowels, it's because it's not a diphthong. These are pronounced separately rather than merging together into one. So A is just one sound, or considered one sound anyway. And so it gets the breathing mark on the second vowel. But ayan is pronounced, the epsilon and the alpha are pronounced separately. And so the epsilon gets the breathing mark. I don't know if that was ever mentioned, but I thought I would. So this is aeon with the subjunctive. And again, because the subjunctive looks the same sometimes as, for example, the future, when you see an aeon and you have a verb that can be parsed in 2 different ways, you're going to be looking for a subjunctive. So you're going to take that verb as subjunctive. And then here we get any. And then the unfulfilled conditionals, it starts out just like a basic conditional, A plus any, but then it has that on in the then clause. And so when we look at the first sentence, we have A philes ton theon sophos A. And notice we have A plus an indicative present active. So that fulfills the first and the last conditions. And then sophos A, we just have present, indicative, present active again, and no on. So that means sentence number 1 is a basic conditional. And we can translate it, if you love God, you are wise. If this, then that. If this is true, then the other one's true too. Okay, the second sentence, we have A plus an indicative aorist active. So that also fulfills the condition for the basic conditionals and the unfulfilled conditionals. But now we look at the rest of the sentence and we have uk an apethanen. And so now we see, okay, this one is an unfulfilled condition. So we're going to translate that in a way that communicates that we don't think that the if clause is true. So we might say, if they heard, they would not die. And we always put would in the second sentence, in the then clause rather. If they had heard, they would not have died might be another way to translate that aorist. Definitely puts it in the past, but how we say it is going to depend a little bit on context. In the third sentence, we have aeon plus ex eothe, which is a subjunctive active, aorist active. And so that's going to put it firmly here in the indefinite conditionals. So number 3 is an indefinite conditional. So we're going to translate that if the king left, the slaves, and how we have here we have the future passive, so the slaves will be freed. So it's probably going to be if the king leaves, the slaves will be freed, because in English we're going to use a present tense for that if clause, even though It's an aorist in Greek. Remember, the aorist is the unmarked tense. It's just the tense you use when it's outside of the indicative. It's just, think of it as normal. Unmarked means I don't really care about this action and when it happened. I'm just letting you know that I'm talking about the king leaving. So you might even add the word should to the, in an indefinite conditional, you can add the word should to the if clause. If the king should leave, the slaves will be freed, but or would be freed. But I don't think the king's going to leave, so the slaves aren't freed. That's the idea. The next sentence, we have a plus an indicative present middle passive. And it does take the sense of the passive here, which doesn't matter for the a, but note that in the then clause, there's no on, it's just an imperative present active verb. And so here that's number 4. It meets the conditions of the basic conditional and there's no on, so it's not unfulfilled. So number 4 is one of those. So we get, if the gospel is preached, rejoice. Just a general basic conditional, if this, then that. Then we have a akathartoi amen, uk an en to hiero ekathemitha. So here we have a with amen is just an indicative present. So we have the first and last conditions met, but in the then clause, we have the on. So that tells us that sentence number 5 is an unfulfilled conditional. So we're going to translate it as if we are unclean, and then we would not sit in the temple. The middle probably has the sense of sitting ourselves here, although depending on context, it could also be, oh no, I'm sorry, this is a deponent verb. So yeah, it's just a middle, a deponent. So it's just, I would not sit in the temple. And then we have the last one is ayan with do. Remember, do is the subjunctive of didomi, one of those me verbs. And so this is going to go here as an indefinite conditional. So if I give to you, with a little bit of emphasis on I, if I give to you, and then it's a question, and we have a future tense here. And so the indefinite probably comes from the sense of I'm asking about the future, so I don't really know what the answer is going to be. If I give to you, will you give then to others? So that's it for practice 20.1. Send me a message if you have any questions.